This video is going to step you through the final material we're going to work with in the Unreal Engine 4 Shaders and Effects Cookbook. This is still in Chapter 6, Advanced Material Techniques, and we are going to do the proximity-based masking with mesh distance fields. This is actually a very simple material to put together. In fact, the longest part is setting up the objects in our scene and double-checking some stuff in the editor before we actually build it. This has a lot of potential uses for different types of materials in different types of situations. So hopefully you find this one to be fun, and it starts to make you think about things, other types of shaders that you could create with this. So the first thing we do need to check if we are going to use the this type of uh, material is that we're going to use mesh distance fields. And we need to go underneath Edit, Project Settings, and double check that we do have mesh distance fields turned on for this project. So it's underneath Engine, Rendering, and then underneath Lighting. It might be on by default, and it is right here. Generate mesh distance fields, and it is already turned on for me. If it's not turned on for you, make sure you do turn it on. So after that, we do need to make sure that our meshes in our scene are set up correctly, because we only want to generate distance fields on this sphere, because the sphere is going to interact with this plane, and we're going to create kind of like almost like a ripple effect. Not animated, but just of it like interacting, where we're going to create like kind of like a cartoony ring effect on this plane. So the plane itself should not be generating mesh distance fields. So I'm going to select the plane. I'm going to double click on it to go into this editor, and I'm going to scroll all the way down to general settings, and I'm going to make sure that generate mesh distance field is unchecked on it. If it is checked, make sure you uncheck it, because we don't want the plane to generate distance fields. We want the sphere to generate distance fields. So now I'm going to double check this one is generating a distance field. So I'm going to go into the mesh. I'm going to scroll down to general settings, and this one does have it checked on. So that's great. And the other thing we do need to look for if we are generating our mesh distance field is I'm going to go up to LOD 0 right here. And I'm going to find the distance field resolution scale. And I'm going to set it to 5. Mine's already set. Yours may or may not be set. Just make sure underneath LOD 0, the distance field resolution scale is set to 5. Now, if we have that all good to go, we can come in and create our material. So I'm going to create a new material named M underscore simple ocean. And I'm going to make sure I apply this to the plane. So I'm going to just drop that on the plane, since the plane is the one that's going to be interacting with other objects. Like this, it's going to be an ocean, is what needs to have the material changed on it. So this is going to generate distance fields that interact with the material on this plane. So let's open it up and start placing some nodes down. So the first one we're going to create is a node that's called distance to nearest surface, which is right here. And this is going to be what looks for that sphere. And we don't want it to necessarily affect the whole thing. Like we don't want this whole entire plane to be affected by this. So we are going to add a scalar parameter called distance offset. So I'm going to hold down S and click. I'm going to call this distance offset. And this will control how much of that plane gets affected by that sphere. So I'm going to actually set this to a low value, 0.05. 0.0015. And I know I've mentioned this before in other videos, but once this is all done, come back here and make changes to that number, and see how it affects your material in the scene. We're then going to multiply these two together. So I'm going to hold down M and click and feed this in. All right, next we're going to create another scalar parameter. So I'm going to hold down S and click. And I'm going to call this one number of steps. And this is going to give us like that stepped sort of look that we're kind of going for, like that cartoony sort of look. And I'm going to just set this to 2. So we're going to have just 2 steps. And we're going to need another multiplier. I'm going to feed this into B and feed this into A. So we're going to be using this to kind of control for, one, how far out our stuff is, like our rings, as well as being able to divide those nicely. So it works a little bit better since we are kind of making something a little bit cartoony to not work with any kind of decimals. So we're going to use a floor. I'm just going to pull it out. A floor node to cut off any of those decimal points that might make it a little bit messy. So last, we are going to then take that final number with the decimals cut off, and we're going to divide it, just a divide node, by how many steps we wanted. So this is going to give us that ripple effect. And let's see, can we see this on here now? Let's see. Yeah, we don't really see anything yet, so it wouldn't really give us any use to plug this into our base color. The thing we need to do next now is going to be to actually give it some colors, where we're going to have 2 colors that based on this, it's either going to be solid the one color, solid the other color, but this is going to allow us to have like those steps in between, those two. So we're going to create 2 constant 4s. And this first one, I'm going to set to white. And this one, I'm going to set to blue, like a cartoony, oceany kind of blue color. So maybe something kind of like that. I'm then going to lerp them. Actually, these should go up here. So let's lerp the 2. And the masking we're going to use is this divide. Last, this lerp gets hooked up into our base color. So it's just going to look white here, since this does need to be close to something generating that that field. So let's save it. Let's apply and save it and see what it looks like back in Unreal. And it should be working. So this is kind of a neat shader. It's really neat to see it interact with that water. I could grab that sphere and I can move it up and down. And it creates those rings for me. So there's a lot of potential uses for this that you could create stuff with. So again, this was a real quick one, but it definitely kind of helps you thinking about doing materials in a different way. Maybe you could take this one and make some kind of weird portal effect, putting something into like Jello. I don't know. There's, you could easily feed this, like if you were to change this to like a black instead. it starts making almost, we could utilize this as a mask. So this output could be used as a mask now. We could then mask out, do other things with this, as a mask. So just to kind of get you thinking about things. So hopefully you had fun with this one. And this should be, I think, unless things change in the future, this might be our last material in Unreal. So hopefully you have enjoyed these videos.